Hello there everyone, Nubkeks here, and in this week's beta update video, we're checking out all of the big class changes and changes to the Covenant abilities on the Shadowlands Beta for World of Warcraft. One thing you'll notice as we go through this video, we're going to start with the Death Knight here. In fact, I need to swap over. Yeah, there we go. So I'm not going to block the tooltips. They did wipe all the characters, so please excuse the UI and keybinds and stuff not being perfectly set up. There was a full wipe on the beta. So yeah, we're on these fresh template characters and trying to get that all set up over the next day or so. First up, let's look at the Death Knight then, where we've seen changes to 2 of their Covenant abilities. The first one here is Shackle the Unworthy. So it's still a dot, right? It still does a big chunk of arcane damage over 14 seconds and reduces the damage the target deals to you. But whereas this before used to reduce its cooldown whenever you did a runic spending attack on the target, and you'd have almost 100% uptime with this. That is now gone, and instead, this is now going to, while Shackle the Unworthy is active on an enemy, your direct damage attacks have a that spend runes have a 50% chance to spread Shackle the Unworthy to a nearby enemy. So this was obviously a conduit effect that was there before, but I think a lot of people certainly weren't aware of the conduit that made this work in AoE, and it was off-putting for people, or certainly at least it forced you to rely on that conduit and kind of need to use the conduit slot to make it work in AoE. So Blizzard's just changed it. Now this works this way just by default. So if we spend some runes, in fact our first rune expender through Shackle the Unworthy onto this guy. One thing you'll notice is that we can't spread it to someone who already has Shackle the Unworthy on them. I don't think we can. Oh no, we can. Absolutely, look at that. There we go. If we time it just right, it's a little bit difficult. I wasn't able to do that in testing. But you can see we're actually able to spread Shackle the Unworthy over to this guy by timing it just right. So if we save up our runes here we go. If I smack him. Oh no, we didn't get lucky that time. We didn't get lucky. 50% chance, right? 50% chance, but you can keep spreading it back and forth. Once the buff wears off one target, you can spread it back. So you could perhaps do some pretty good stuff. You get some very good uptime on this, just spreading this around. That's actually really cool. I didn't expect that it would work that way. When I was testing it out, it didn't work that way, because obviously with just 2 targets here with the target dummies that we've got, it's actually kind of difficult to get the timing right, but hey, we made it work there, and that's pretty cool. The other one that has changed significantly-ish is the Necrolord Covenant ability. So this is your Abomination Limb. So the 2-minute cooldown, you're going to sprout the limb. It's going to do lots of damage. This is now target capped. It only hits up to 5 nearby enemies with that AoE damage. It will also pull an enemy to your location if they're further from 8 yards from you. Now, I'm going to cover the bottom part of the tooltip first, which is a simple change, and I think a very welcome change, which is that Abomination Limb can only pull the same enemy once every 4 seconds. So I think that's a good balancing change. Like that, we salute the brave PvP testers that figured this one out for us. Thank you very much. That must not have been very fun to play again. So I think this is a good change. Pulling someone every 4 seconds, you can pull somebody 3 times with Abomination Limb, in theory. That's still really good. That's still good. 2 to 3 times, reasonably speaking. Now, there is also another benefit. You can see here for the Frost DK, the first time this limb pulls an enemy, you gain Rhyme, right? Pretty cool. So I gain Rhyme. Very, very nice. And I think if I move over here... Aha, no, it is only on the very first proc. So you can see, although I'm trying to pull these guys, it's not going to work if I come over here. Okay, so there you go. That is exactly how that works. Just the first time, you're just going to get a free proc of Rhyme once off with your Abomination Limb, which isn't too bad. This target dummy is trying to murder me now. He's not too happy with me. Let's just zip on out of here. I'm not even sure where movement abilities are. This is a fresh character. Okay, we'll just zip on out. You're going to get other benefits, of course, for the other Death Knight specs. We'll go check those out right now. I believe for the Blood DK, you're going to get... dismounted. You're going to get 3 charges of Bone Shield. And for the Unholy DK, you should get Runic Corruption. So we'll just double check with those. But yeah, I think this is a good change overall. They're essentially trying to make this a little bit more appealing in PvE in particular, while also making it not absolutely crazy in PvP. So yeah, you can see we're going to get 3 charges of Bone Shield as a Blood DK. Not a particularly big deal, but it will help you at the start of the pull to get into your ossuary window where you want to have 5 or more charges of Bone Shield. So it's a decent perk. And for Unholy DK, it's going to activate Runic Corruption. So just fuel your rotation a little bit. Again, I think it's a small thing. But yeah, just like a small little extra bonus to throw in there for the DK with Abomination Limb to make it more attractive for PvE, and then just with the pull change, just making it not totally crazy for PvP. So I think these are probably good changes overall for the DK. I think a good set of balancing tweaks. Not a massive deal. But yeah, I think pushing things in the right direction. Over on the Druid then, big change we've got here is, well, a couple of changes. A smaller one is to the Kindred Spirits ability. This is with the Kyrian Covenant. The empowerment that you're going to give to your ally for the damage dealer rolls has been nerfed down slightly. So this used to energize your bonded partner, giving them 30% of your damage as additional arcane damage, healing, or absorption. That has been slightly lowered to 25% of your damage as additional arcane damage, healing, or absorption. I think that's still really good. I think it's still solid, but just toned down a bit. Now, the bigger deal, which is probably going to affect particularly the balance and words are failing me, the feral druid, and also, unfortunately, slightly the bear druid, which I don't think was that important, but they have nerfed significantly, I think, Ravenous Frenzy. So Ravenous Frenzy obviously is your big 3-minute cooldown. It's going to give you this stacking buff, stacking your damage, healing, haste by 2% with each stack. This has had its duration reduced from a 20-second buff to a 15-second buff. That is a much bigger deal than it sounds. Why? Well, because it's stacking up, right? So the first 5 seconds of this spell, you know, the bonuses are very tiny. It's not that big of a deal. Whereas the last 5 seconds of the spell are a really big deal because you've got your thing stacked up super high and everything you're doing is super powerful. So yeah, reducing this by 5 seconds, this could realistically, this might even nerf the power of this by almost 50%. I'm not sure whether the exact shooting will be, but it's certainly, although you've lowered the duration by a quarter, it's nerfing it by more than a quarter, so that's significant. I think this is, you know, it's still probably a decent burst CD. I mean, perhaps they could have just made the stacks a little bit weaker. That might have been better. I think it's still a good burst CD that lines up with the burst windows of Balance and of Feral. Lines up with the burst windows of Guardian too. But yeah, I think considering how strong this was simming for Balance and Feral in particular, I think it's a good change. And yeah, there you go. That's the Druid. Oh, and actually one final thing, which I almost forgot to mention, but kind of a nice thing here is that you did have a conduit, right, called Tireless Pursuit, and that has been buffed. Obviously, I don't have it on this character quite yet, but that was giving you movement speed, 40% bonus movement speed, would carry over from your cat form or your travel form after you shapeshifted. They've actually buffed up that conduit. It used to give you a speed buff for 2 to 4.5 seconds afterwards, roughly. Now it's going to give you movement speed for 3 to about 7 seconds afterwards. So that's quite nice, right? That's going to be quite a good perk in PvP in particular, and for just running around, you're going to get a lot more move speed. So that's over in the land of the hunters, and my goodness, I absolutely love the new options for the female Tauren. I love the flowers in the hair, but they have seen some fairly significant changes as well. One thing which actually took me by surprise, though I guess I kind of understand it, is that Death Chakram appears to have been nerfed substantially. It looks like they have halved the damage that it does. Of course, it's still going to generate focus, which is still solid. But yeah, this is now going to be quite a lot weaker than it was before. You can see right there, for example, the Death Chakram, it did about 7,500 damage. It's still a good chunk of damage, don't get me wrong, but may not be the dominant single target option over, for example, the Venthyr anymore. This was simming perhaps a bit too good, so they're trying to tone it down. They have also lowered the damage of the Night Fae, Wild Hunt, by about a quarter whenever you proc the damage. So, I mean, let's test this out. Let's test it out in a single target, shall we? So here we go. 3, 2, 1. We're just going to click buttons because I'm getting this bar all set up, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing at all. We're a clicker now. I'm just curious how much this is going to... let's put this on as well. Yeah, there we go. Let's see how much damage in single target Wild Hunt is going to do. So in pure single target, the Wild Spirits, you can see it did a lot less than the Death Chakram. It did about 5.7k. So that's quite a bit weaker, but obviously that is going to apply in AoE. I'm not 100% sure why they nerfed this one, but they did. So there you go. I guess particularly because of marksmanship, perhaps, where Rapid Fire, in fact, let's actually swap over. Let's test that one out. Rapid Fire was apparently particularly nutty because it would proc every single time. Kind of insane. All right, the moment of truth. Let's see how much this is going to do. I'm going to do a Rapid Fire first. But thank you guys for pointing this out last time, because I had no idea that this is how it worked. So if we do all of this, It certainly looks ridiculous. I love how it looked. Let's just fire off some spells here. I'm not worrying too much. The Wild Spirits, it didn't do that much damage. I think this has been fixed, guys. I think it's been fixed. Yeah, I think it's been fixed. That did not work. They fixed it. They fixed it. So yeah, gosh, that's a big nerf to Wild Spirits. I feel like, you know, obviously this is supposed to shine in AoE. It's not supposed to be as good in single target, right? It will do 5 times as much damage in AoE, whereas in comparison, the Necrolord thing doesn't do bonus damage in AoE. That's just a single target thing. So like, I kind of get what they're doing with that. That's okay. Okay, I get it. I think it makes sense as well that every single hit of Barrage and every single hit of Rapid Fire wouldn't trigger, because that would be kind of ridiculous. So I think that makes sense. That was bug fixed. You guys were getting real hyped about that in some of the comments. Like, that is obviously not going to go live. So yeah, there you go. Some changes to that stuff. They've also tweaked a couple of the legendaries. Again, I suspect another bug fix or marksmanship. I'm going to be testing Hunter out during this week, so I'll get back to you guys on that with the Hunter review. But obviously, you had this Serpent Stalker's Trickery legendary, right? Which was whenever you cleaved an aim shot with your multi-shot, so your trick shot, you cleave an aim shot. Once you consume that trick shot, it would then fire a free arcane shot at up to 3 different targets that you hit with the aim shot. But that was working insanely well with Chimera Shot, because Chimera Shot replaced aim shot, which is going to hit 2 different targets. You can see actually with the numbers now that Chimera Shot's hitting the main target for, I think, more damage than it did before, but only half damage on the second target. So they've really tweaked up this legendary. They're obviously aware of this, basically because Chimera Shot did, I think it did about 1,000 damage to both targets before. So when you cleave that aim shot between the 3 targets, it fired the 3 free arcane shots. If it fired 3 free Chimera shots, they basically split up and would hit all the different targets, and the value is absolutely nuts. So I believe that this change is specifically to address that, which makes sense. They're aware of it. It's probably still very strong, and it's probably supposed to be pretty strong, but not crazy OP. So there you go. Change to Chimera Shot, and again, the Serpent Stalker's Trickery legendary. I'm still going to go and test that out this week, of course. And then the Soul Forged Embers legendary, which is where you throw down your tar trap, throw a flare into it, it goes on fire, lights enemies on fire. That now has a 5 target cap, so it is target capped, which again is fairly expected. Blizzard is going in and adding target caps to a lot more things more consistently, so there you go, target cap on that. Over for the monks then, we have a few intriguing changes actually. For the Mistweaver, there's a tooltip update for Enveloping Breath. So this is a passive that you have with your new Invoke Yu'lon cooldown, that 3-minute cooldown summoning in Yu'lon. This is a tooltip update, so while Yu'lon is active, or Chi-Chi of course, they will heal up to 6 nearby targets with Enveloping Breath when you cast Enveloping Mist. It's going to heal for about 1,700 over 7 seconds and increase the healing they receive from you by 10%. Bearing in mind that, let's say, oh gosh, where are my spells here on this bar? But like a Revival, for example, heals weirdly for 2,407.9. Weird decimal point in there. But, you know, 2,500 healing on everybody in the party or raid with a Revival. Enveloping Breath doing 1,700 over 7 seconds to 6 targets. That's pretty solid. You'd want to make sure in a dungeon group to cast Enveloping Mist every 7 seconds to keep uptime, full uptime on this. And in a raid, you could, you know, potentially spam out some Enveloping Breaths and get this up on multiple people. Still seems very, very powerful. I expect this might get toned down a little bit. This seems a little strong right now, and Mistweaver monks are pumping the healing, so I'm expecting some nerfs for that. But there you go. That's the current change in this patch, just clarifying that tooltip a bit. Where it gets a bit more interesting is Feline Stomp, the Covenant ability for all the monk specs, has received a bunch of changes. So I believe for Mistweaver, it's still basically the same, right? So you're going to do damage, about 800 damage up to 5 enemies, heal 700 health up to 5 allies. I don't have an intellect weapon on right now, so the numbers are a little bit low. And it will also heal up to 5 enemies in the Feline will be healed by an Essence Font Bolt. So that is still the same. For Brewmaster, it's going to, well, the damage numbers and stuff are going to be higher because I've got actual agility gear on. So there you go. But yeah, it's going to do the damage and the healing. Up to 5 enemies caught in the Fey line are ignited with Breath of Fire, which is a little underwhelming, to be honest. The really intriguing one, though, is when we go to the Windwalker. This is where things get spicy. This was formerly, I'm going to hide this for the spoilers, this is formerly going to rip out some chi and energy spheres, right? So you get these little globes that fall on the ground, and you pick them up to get a bit of chi, a bit of energy. What it does now, as you can see, up to 5 enemies caught in the Fey line suffer an additional 1,800 damage. That's quite good. That is quite good, seeing as it does a lot of damage. 1,800 damage. Like a Rising Sun Kick is doing it's about half. Yeah, I mean, Rising Sun Kick is 2,600 damage. Fist of Fury is it's gonna be main target 5,000 damage, but 2,500 damage again to 5 other targets. This is quite a solid amount of damage. That's quite a solid amount of damage, and again, because you can reset this so often, I expect this could actually be a pretty big deal here. This could be a pretty big deal. Let's do our Fist of Fury. Here we go. Press the right button. We've got stuff kind of clashing here a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this should be a fairly substantial source of damage here for you. Pretty nuts, I think. Pretty nuts. Pretty exciting. Here we go. Want to make sure to fire this off. There we are. And yeah, there you go. Like if we look at this right now, Phalanx Stomp is doing like 20% of my damage in that little window there. That's pretty nuts. So I think this suddenly became very, very attractive for Windwalkers. Going to give some good damage, especially in AoE. So that's kind of nuts right now. It might get tuned down. It seems, my initial impression would be, this does seem to be maybe tuned a little too high. We have another couple of changes as well for the monks, some relatively small stuff. I guess one of the bigger changes is for the Brewmaster monks then, is they have been nerfed a small bit. In Keg Smash in particular, Keg Smash is now going to do reduced damage beyond 5 targets, so a bit of a target cap coming in there. And it now is going to only reduce the remaining cooldown on your brews by 3 seconds. So that is down from 4 seconds of cooldown reduction with every Keg Smash. I believe this is particularly targeted at like the Keg Smash Legendary, which was just, I think, very dominant for Brewmaster and kind of pulling ahead of the other ones. So this is to bring it back in line a little bit. Our Blind Monk. He's getting excited. He's in Brewmaster spec, but he's just thinking about that Windwalker Phalanx Stomp right now. That's what he's dreaming about. For Paladins then, a couple of very small changes. For Holy Paladin, Holy Light is going to do just under about 10% more healing, so a small buff to Holy Light, which is nice. More importantly, one of the conduits that was there, which was buffing previously Crusader Aura to make it reduce the effects of fears by, I believe, 30% at rank 1. This effect on the conduit is now being moved. It's now called Pure Concentration instead of Stalwart as a Crusader. So it no longer affects Crusader Aura. It's going to affect Concentration Aura. And it's now going to reduce the effects of fears by 20%. And that will actually scale up to 48% at the maximum conduit rank compared to the previous 60%. I think this conduit is really pushing Concentration Aura as being extremely powerful in PvP. Just reducing the effects of silences, interrupts, and reducing the effects of fears. I mean, certainly for me as a priest main, like a shadow priest, probably for most of for season 1 of Shadowlands, I'm kind of going, wow, Holy Paladins are going to be a nightmare, reducing fear effects, and then also of course having the Holy Paladin PvP talent where their dispel dispels my debuffs on everybody. Nightmare for us priests, not going to enjoy that, or warlocks. Paladin's going to be our worst nightmare. So that's kind of an interesting change there for sure. And then another minor thing is they kind of almost doubled, not quite doubled. I guess they increased by 50%. Excuse me, my maths is bad. I think they increased the damage of Vanquisher's Hammer, the direct damage, by about 50%. I need Holy Power for this to work. Bonk. So that just hit really hard. Like that just crit for 2,500, which is a lot. But yeah, so let's say a Templar's Verdict, for example, is going to do 1,800 holy damage. You can see the Vanquisher's Hammer is doing 1,200 shadow damage. So it hits pretty hard. Blade of Justice does 1,100 physical damage. That gets reduced by armor. So yeah, they just made Vanquisher's Hammer itself do more damage. I believe the Conduit also enhances its damage. So this could start hitting actually pretty hard and feel like a satisfying ability in of itself, on top of obviously doing, like, for Red Paladin, for example, triggering a free Divine Storm with our next... let's fire this off here, shall we? Does that consume the Judgment buff? Oh, it does. Well, that's kind of bad. Boom. So yeah, it does consume the Judgment buff, right? your next holy power ability. This is technically a holy power ability, so you'd want a judgment after this to get the judgment onto Templars. Anyway, there you go. Something cool. There, it's cool. Over for the priest then, we've got a few little changes. One disappointing change for me was that basically all of the endurance conduits were nerfed. That certainly affects the holy priest in particular in a pretty harsh way, seeing as their defenses are already bad, so I'm a bit sad about that. On the Shadow Priest then, Hungering Void, this talent is now in, right, to replace Legacy of the Void. So your second Void Bolt cast on the same target will do 25% more damage, cause the target to receive 15% more damage from you until cancelled. Don't really know what that means. And it will also extend the duration of your Void form by 1 second. If your Void Bolt critically hits, it will extend the Void form by an additional 1 second, I think it is supposed to say right there. So yeah, interesting. This doesn't seem to work properly at all. So hang on. If I go back to fighting this Stalwart Guardian, no, if I go back to this one. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that I just tested this right here, obviously, and you can see Void Form only had 15-second uptime, which it has by default. So that's a bit weird. So I don't think this is working properly. It doesn't seem to be extending the Void Form at all. I mean, if we go into this, right, as Shadow Priest, we'll put our dots on. We'll just go straight into Void Form here, right, Void Eruption. Fire off our Void Bolt. I don't believe that it is working at all. We're not getting any Void Form extensions. Here comes a Void Bolt. Yeah, so like that's definitely not working as intended, I would say. I don't believe that. I mean, you guys could have tracked the damage numbers. I'm not sure if this damage component is going to work either, and I'm not sure how this for until cancel thing is working either. If I look for, let's say, if we go into debuff uptime, yeah, I don't think it was doing any particular debuffs either. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm really not sure what's going on there. I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, we'll see. That seems a little bit bugged, to say the least. But the idea is very simple. You know, it's clearly this is supposed to be a purely single target thing, whereas Ancient Madness, giving you loads of crit strike chance, is going to really ups your AoE damage, your multi-dots as well. Surrender to Madness is obviously that crazy, yeah, crazy sort of funnel damage thing. Hungering Void is supposed to be single target. You do way more single target damage with your Void Bolts in particular. And get that slight longer Void Form. It looks fun. I think it's going to be a good talent when it works. Now, next up, we do have, finally then, Boon of the Ascended has been nerfed. Right? It has been nerfed. It now does less damage than before. In fact, significantly less damage. Also, the Ascended Eruption, I believe, is doing less healing as well. Let's just go into Boon of the Ascended here. Now, one thing to note is that Ascended Blast now heals for 120% the damage done. This is to maintain sort of the healing relatively similarly. And you can see that this is weird. I'm not sure what this means. So we're going to go back into it. But if you look at the tooltip here. Oops, let me click this. There we go. If we look at the tooltip for the Ascended Nova, it's going to do up to 826 AoE damage based on number of enemies. So I don't really know what that means. I mean, can I hit? The area of it is quite small. So it seems like it's doing less damage. It seems like it has some sort of target number scaling. I'm not exactly sure what the maths on it is. I think the most important thing to note is that basically it has been nerfed for AoE. So Boon of the Ascended is going to be doing significantly less damage now than it was before. Significantly less damage. Like, that's interesting, right? If I hit only one target, it's doing 800 damage to them. Yeah. So I guess they want to make it, I guess the goal there is that Ascended Nova should be worth using in single target, and it's still going to be good in AoE, but not as good, I think, is the idea. And then just nerfing the sort of the damage and then the burst healing of this ability as well, just to bring it in line with the other ones, which I think is fine. I believe that there is bugs right now as well with like the Venthyr ability, and I think a Necrolord as well, where I think they're doing like 40% more damage. I think that's an error. I think that is a mistake in tuning. I don't expect that to actually go live. But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. Like, if we look at Mind Games right now, it's doing like 3,000 damage and reversing up to 4,500. Like, that's a lot, considering that Devouring Plague in this gear is doing 900 damage, an additional 1,600. You know, this is probably hitting a bit too hard. So yeah, that's probably a bug. Expect that to be fixed. There is a lot of changes. You guys might freak out there if you look at the patch notes, because or the data mining. There was loads of number changes for the priest, but they're essentially just changing the aura modifier for the class, which affects all spells, and bringing the actual spells then down, and they've just forgotten some of them. But yeah, priest balance is broadly speaking, still the same as it was. That aura modifier is just an overall thing. Don't worry about it. For the rogue specs, then, we've got quite a few tweaks that are going to have a fairly big effect. First, sub has some small changes. Shadow Strike seems to have actually got its damage buffed slightly. However, to compensate for that, they seem to have nerfed as well then the damage of Shadow Vault. So Shadow Vault being your combo point spender that does AoE damage. And I think the idea with this is to kind of de-emphasize the power of sub and AoE, that they're supposed to be okay at AoE but not the best, and to sort of re-emphasize their single target damage. I think that's the idea with that, so that's kind of intriguing. The bigger change, though, this patch is to Outlaw. The Outlaw rogue, with Between the Eyes in particular, this was formerly increasing your critical damage to the target by 20%. Now this is going to increase your critical strike chance to the target by 20% instead. So that's way better. That is a big increase. Obviously, you know, in starter gear, your crit chance is going to be low. So getting more crit chance is going to be way better for the first patch than getting crit damage. That's a huge deal. And it also means that with your Blade Flurry, you know, your single target attacks are going to be cleaving around. It's just going to also buff up that damage as well. So that's going to be very, very strong. They've also made it so that Blade Flurry is now going to let you apply your poisons as well. So your instant poison, your wound poison, numbing poison, crippling poison, all those poisons, whichever ones you have on, are now going to spread in AoE with Blade Flurry. So it's a nice bit of extra damage with instant poison. More importantly, though, it's going to let you stack up crippling poison or apply numbing poison in AoE, which is something that sub and outlaw could sub and assassination could already do, but that you as the outlaw rogue formerly couldn't do. So that's a nice change to bring you in line with the other rogue specs. And I think, yeah, it's quite a significant set of buffs actually for the outlaw rogue. That is definitely going to be felt, especially Between the Eyes, and certainly pushes the reliance on your damage away from, you know, getting a roll the bones with well, you see, we got the wrong one here, right? We got the wrong one. But yeah, roll the bones, that's, you're not reliant on getting the shark one, the shark fin buff, whatever it's called. Can't remember. Okay. There's a couple of big changes then to the Covenant abilities. First up, Echoing Reprimand for the Kyrian got its damage buffed quite a bit. It's now going to do 1,500 arcane damage straight up. And then also you can see the wording on this has changed to be a bit clearer, that your damaging finishing moves that consume the same number of combo points as your anima charge function as if they consumed 7 combo points. So let's see if this actually works, shall we? So for example, how long of a buff will we get with Between the Eyes? Let's find out. So if we fire this off, we've got 3. Okay, cool. We fire this off. Yes, there we go. 20 seconds of Between the Eyes buff on the target. So this is a huge deal. So yeah, they've essentially bug fixed this, which is great. So this should also mean that things like, I believe that Rupture, let's double check. I believe Rupture should do the same thing. And Venom, this will also work as well. The Envenom buff should last longer now, which is great. It was a real annoying thing that it didn't work before. So let's go. Anima Charge, we need one more. This will give us enough. So let's see with Rupture. Yeah, we got a mega big Rupture. It should happen the exact same thing with Envenom. Let's double check. Testing live. So Envenom, we should get a really long duration Envenom. Yeah, we got like 8 seconds of Envenom there. That's good. That's really, really good. Okay, great. So that is a big, big, big buff to this Kyrian ability. I believe this Kyrian ability now is looking like probably going to be the best consistent single target DPS Covenant ability for the rogues. Though, of course, you know, that this one obviously is going to work at single target now, the new Flagellation, which we looked at last week. So that's cool. The Night Fae one obviously gives you some good burst damage. So yeah, I think this is a big, big increase for the Kyrian, right? We got Flagellation, obviously. It's kind of weird. We talked about that last week. One massive change then is it came. We were expecting it, and it has arrived. The nerf to Serrated Bone Spike for the Necrolords, which was doing way too much damage before. This has been toned down a lot. So you still have 3 charges. It now costs 15 energy. 30-second recharge on this. You're going to embed a Bone Spike in the target. You do a bit of damage up front, and then you're going to take bleed damage every 2.8 seconds until they die. And that refunds a charge when the target dies or is healed to full. And you're going to get 1 combo point extra per active Bone Spike. So if I fire this off once, I'm going to get 1 combo point. Fire it off a second time, I'm going to get 2. If I fire it a third time, let's do it against a mob that's not going to hit me, we're going to get 3. Now, one thing you will notice that is not there from when I did this before was that previously this also did bonus damage to your target based on the number of active bone spikes. In fact, it did a lot of bonus damage based on the number of active bone spikes. That is no longer the case. So very simply, this Covenant ability is going to shine against, well, like, 2 to 3 targets. Against these smaller number of targets, that permanent bleed, the damage will add up over time. You're going to be getting lots of combo points over time. Obviously, it's going to be great in like 3's Arena because you can keep getting these charges back, and it gives you efficient combo point generation, like when targets are healed to full. So that's cool. But yeah, this is just, it's going to be a core rotational thing, good against small numbers of multiple targets. So I think this is a very good change. This was completely overpowered before, so I think this change makes a lot of sense. So yeah, there you go. That's the Serrated Bone Spike. This is quite a big shift, I think, in rogue balance for sure. Quite a big shift here. We see the Kyrian really jumping to the fore now with single target damage. Serrated Bone Spike no longer dominating the rogue choices and crowding out the other ones. Obviously, we had the Flagellation rework there last week, so lots of changes. Big buffs to the Outlaw Rogue. Let me know what you guys think. You rogue players, are you excited for this? I'm excited to get into my rogue testing. It's gonna be one of the later specs I do the full spec review for, one of the later classes, because it was the last class I looked at in my initial deep dive series. So yeah, I'm excited though to get into the rogue. I think it's still gonna be awesome. So there you go. Big changes though this week. Very big changes. Over for the Shaman then, we have some fairly substantial changes coming in for them as well. The first thing is that you do have a new potency conduit, which I don't have quite yet to show you, but just to cover it, there was previously a conduit called Earth and Sky, which was about consuming fulmination charges, and obviously with fulmination being gone, that no longer makes sense. So the Ellie Shaman has a new potency conduit called Pyroclastic Shock, which is going to give you a 15 to 36% chance, depending on the conduit rank, for your Earth Shock to extend the duration of Flame Shock. So should help you with some multi-dotting stuff and some funnel damage and things like that. I think it's pretty exciting. Now, Resto Shaman, which we'll actually look at next, also got some changes here. The big one is to Riptide, in particular to Riptide. So the direct healing of Riptide has gone way, way higher. They almost doubled, actually, the healing, the instant healing from Riptide, which is a pretty big deal. It's slightly being put off there because of Tarn. So, for example, my healing wave is going to heal for 3,000. My Riptide is going to instantly heal for 1,700. So they've definitely upped that instant healing from Riptide, make it a bit snappier, a bit more responsive, which is cool. To make up for that, Torrent, which is increasing the initial heal from Riptide, that did get reduced from a 30% increase to 20% to sort of balance that out. And also to balance this out, they have slightly lowered the healing of Healing Wave and of Chain Heal, only by a small amount, but those are healing for slightly less now than they were before. Over for the Covenants then, we've got quite a lot of changes actually, quite a number of tuning changes. So first of all, Vesper Totem is now doing less damage. A good chunk less damage. It's going to do 600 damage up to 6 enemies per cast. Again, for me as a Resto Shaman spec right now, Lava Burst, for example, just 1,500. So that got nerfed down a bit. Again, they keep nerfing this. They're just trying to tune stuff up. Interestingly enough, the Nightfall Covenant did get nerfed as well. So now it should be doing, again, also less damage. It's going to do 8,000 nature damage split evenly amongst 4 targets. So I think this is particularly to tune it down a bit for a single target that it was probably doing a bit too much damage. Over here, the Venthyr, their Chain Harvest, got its damage reduced as well, but the healing actually has gone up. So that should be pretty good. So yeah, we'll see exactly what happens with that one. The bigger change, though, is to the Necrolord Covenant with your Primordial Wave. So this has been slightly nerfed. So for example, we can see here for the Resto Shaman, we're obviously going to be doing this on an ally to apply Riptide. They reduce then the Healing Wave effect. So your next Healing Wave will also hit all targets affected by Riptide for 60% normal healing. This was formerly doing 100%. For the Elemental Shaman, I believe it's down from 100% bonus Lava Burst on all your Flame Shock targets down to 80%. Yep, you can see it right there. So this will allow you to, Primordial Wave will allow you multi-dot with Flame Shock, but the Lava Burst is not going to be quite as strong. For Enhancement Shaman, I believe it's still the same. Your Lightning Bolt should still hit everyone for 100% effectiveness. So yeah, that's exactly what it does. Lightning Bolt hits all targets with Flame Shock for 100% normal damage. I think that's fair, seeing as obviously to cast Lightning Bolt, you're giving up your cast of Chain Lightning and the synergies that has with Crash Lightning. So I think that's a reasonable balancing change. But yeah, kind of interesting tweaks overall there to the Covenant abilities. Again, toning down the AoE damage in particular of a lot of them, and tweaking up some of the healing stuff for the Resto Shaman as well. So There you go. Over for Warlock then. And by the way, I love this freaking socketless eyes on the undead. Ah, that is cool. But we've got some really big shakeups to the Covenant abilities. So Decimating Bolt for the Necrolord has received even more nerfs / tweaks. Yeah, I'd say nerfs overall. Obviously for Demonology Warlock, Decimating Bolt at number 1 for all the specs. Just the cast of Decimating Bolt itself now does less damage. For Demonology, this now affects your next 3 Demon Bolts. So this no longer interacts with Shadow Bolt for Demonology, only with Demon Bolt. But it only buffs the damage by 100%, which is down from 200%. Though both the damage and the scaling still increases based off your target's lower health. The lower the health, their damage is. So yeah, that's a big nerf to that. If we look at Affliction or Demon Destruction, you're going to see that, again, these are no longer increasing the damage by 100%, by 200%, but by 100%. Next 3 Incinerates buff by 100%. I'm curious, actually, if we go for Fire and Brimstone, it buffs the next 3 Incinerates by 40% only with that one. And obviously, if we jump over to Affliction, it's again buffing our next 3 Shadow Bolts by only 100% now. So a big nerf to Decimating Bolt. I still think it's going to be strong, but it's not totally insane. So next 3 Shadow Bolts, if we go with Drain Soul, it's our next Drain Soul is going to do 100% more damage. So it's still good, but not totally crazy. Venthyr actually received a whopping nerf as well here in this patch with their Impending Catastrophe. Catastrophe for this. So you do this Cloud of Anima, travels to the target. You can see they reduce the damage of this. Does 200 damage to enemies in its path. This does 20% of the damage that this used to do. Yes, they reduced the damage number on the travel of the cloud by 5 times, right? They divided it by 5. Which is a little bit rough. So the damage it does while traveling is way lower. When it explodes, they also massively nerf the explosion. Again, they halved the damage this does when it explodes. They halve the damage, right? It explodes, it puts this big dot on targets for 12 seconds. That's now half as powerful as it was before. So the damage on this has gone way down. It is, however, untarget capped, and it does put your curses on the target, so that's supposed to be the usefulness of that one. But yeah, that's a pretty massive change for sure. I guess the idea is that making the Night Fae one more attractive then in AoE, relatively speaking. Right, Soul Rot has become more attractive now just by virtue of they've nerfed the damage of these other ones so much. Finally then, the Kyrian, they got their damage slightly nerfed as well, so this does slightly less damage and slightly less damage over time. However, it does still generate those 5 soul shards if the target dies with it on, which is pretty cool. So yeah, definitely a big shakeup for the Covenant abilities for the Warlock. Yeah, my goodness, I did not expect such a massive nerf to the Venthyr, but it's still going to be very good in larger scale AoE. Night Fae becomes more attractive in comparison, and perhaps Night Fae with Affliction, right? Perhaps Night Fae with Inevitable Demise, right? Perhaps that is going to be the go-to for Affliction now. You never know. Or, obviously, Necrolord getting nerfed down a lot. Again, I guess the last round of nerfs just weren't enough. It's good that it just works with Demon Bolt only for Demonology. That's a good change. But yeah, it's been nerfed down an awful lot. Still going to be strong for Execute, still strong for single target. And yeah, the Kyrian one being nerfed down slightly too. I'm not sure exactly where people are going to go. Again, this is a big... check out your Warlock Discord, see what the big Warlocks are saying, seeing what they're going to figure out with the theory crafting and the Sims. I wouldn't be shocked to see Kyrian pull ahead. That's my initial thoughts is that Kyrian, because of its secondary effect, could pull ahead for some of these specs. I wouldn't be surprised to see Night Fae start to come to the fore with some sort of Inevitable Demise build for Affliction for some funnel damage. That could be good. Some funnel or even burst AoE damage. That could be cool. We'll have to see. But yeah, big shake up there for sure. Oh, one other minor change actually, which is kind of cool, was that you did get a buff to one of your conduits. Your Diabolic Bloodstone conduit, which is giving you a leech for 8 seconds after you consume your health stone. That actually got its effects doubled, right? Going from 5% to 12% leech to 10% to 24% leech. So I think that's more significant. That's actually quite fun, right? Getting 24% leech at max rank of that conduit. That's definitely something you could play around with some big damage bursts. So that one's kind of exciting. Some good news amongst the impending catastrophe of potentially bad news for your Covenant ability. Finally then, looking at warrior changes, and there's been a nerf to Condemn. Condemn is now doing less damage than before. So if I show you this, so for example, right now, as a Fury warrior, Execute is going to do 2,200 physical damage, right? If I switch over to the Venthyr, it's going to do 1,600 shadow damage. And I believe they might have also slightly nerfed the damage prevention that it does as well. Of course, you know, this seems worse than it is in the sense that shadow damage bypasses armor. So yeah, it should in theory still do it should probably now do about the same damage as execute. I think that's their goal, but it's more about the being able to use it, you know, on targets above 80% health. That's supposed to be, I think, more of the appeal in the damage reduction. I'm kind of curious if we swap over very quickly to protection, because when we did the maths on this before, I think one of the appeals of Condemn for protection is that it can provide an alternate to ignore pain, right? So for example, it's going to prevent up to 2,241 damage with up to 40 rage, compared to ignore pain, prevent up to 3,200 damage. So okay, it's kind of like an interesting choice there. It's like you'll prevent about 2/3 of the damage as an ignore pain. You're going to lose out on some damage reduction, but you'll do an awful lot of bonus single target damage. So that's certainly interesting. For example, with Prot Warrior now, it's going to do 1,900 shadow damage if we change to the normal execute. Normal execute does 2,500. So yeah, I mean, that's roughly speaking what's happening there. Now we also have some other interesting tweaks for the warriors. We'll actually look at Prot Warrior first while we are here, which is that Vanguard. I think that's a tooltip bug. What I was led to believe was that they increased the armor gain from strength by another 10%. So it was supposed to be 50. Let me just double check. It was supposed to be 50% of your strength before was being added as armor, and it's supposed to be increased to 60%. This says up to 100%, which has taken me by surprise, and that seems a little bit crazy. So I expect, yeah, anyway, we'll see. Essentially, though, you're going to be a tankier boy as a warrior. You're going to be tougher, tankier, have more armor, which I think is nice. So yeah, warrior, that's a nice buff to the Prot Warrior for their survivability. Over on Fury, they received a couple of interesting tweaks as well. First up, Single-Minded Fury has been slightly buffed. It now increases damage done by 10% instead of 8%. So that's just to, again, you know, after more testing and with different gear, just trying to keep it competitive with the dual-wielding two-handed weapons of Titan's Grip. So that's sort of what's happening there. They also received a couple of smaller tweaks too to some of their abilities. So in the talent tree specifically, War Machine is now better for Fury, right? So auto attacks generate 20% more rage now. I believe that is up from 10% that it was formerly. And then they have nerfed down Frothing Berserker by a lot, actually. Now, Rampage has a 20% chance to immediately refund 20 rage. This was formerly giving you 40 rage. So it's half as good. So that's quite a big nerf to that. Trying to give some love then to Cruelty. So some emphasis on Raging Blow, or to Bloodthirst with Seethe. So I'm not sure what this means for the Fury Warrior. But yeah, there you are. I mean, War Machine definitely becoming more appealing to compete, I guess, a bit more with like Sudden Death with Condemn and whatnot. It's certainly interesting, right? It's certainly interesting changes there. Now, the biggest change, though, prepare yourself, brace yourselves for this, my warrior friends. Although I will say that the warrior, our guild's warrior, our raid's warrior, he's quite happy about this change. He thinks it's overall good, but it's a big nerf, so brace yourselves. Your Spell Reflect legendary called the Misshapen Mirror, which used to increase the duration of Spell Reflect by 200% and apply to your entire party, has now been nerfed to only increase the duration of Spell Reflect by 60%, and it only applies to one ally, the ally that is closest to you. So that's a big nerf. That is a very, very big nerf to the Spell Reflection legendary, massive nerf. Obviously, I think the downside is that, you know, that was quite an interesting legendary before. It's not so interesting now. I think the biggest, the reason that, you know, our warrior said, you know what, he's actually fine with this nerf, and that, you know, there's mixed feelings among the warrior Discord and what people are saying, is that the old version of this Misshapen Mirror was so incredibly strong. And by giving your whole team Spell Reflect, number one, it gave some magic damage reduction to your whole team for like 15 seconds. So that was really powerful in raids. Giving everyone Spell Reflect would be insane for PvP, insane in Mythic Plus in particular, and had a lot of potential to be broken. And there was a lot of fear amongst the warrior community that the legendary would be so strong that you'd be forced to take it, overtaking a legendary that would increase your damage, that this legendary might crowd out all the other ones. There were fears that they could nerf Spell Reflection and just, you know, blacklist a lot of spells to not be affected by Spell Reflect. They just ignore Spell Reflect if this was going to be too strong, etc., etc. There's just a lot of balance concerns. So they've nerfed it into the ground, basically, and that's no longer a worry for you. But yeah, I do feel this new version is a little less attractive, a little less exciting. You know, at this point, I'd almost prefer if it just let you personally reflect 2 spells instead of 1. You know, like whatever, make Spell Reflect last 3 seconds longer and let it reflect 2 spells instead of 1. I'd probably actually prefer that as a tank or as a warrior. I think I'd like that more. I probably like that more instead of doing the ally thing. I get the appeal of it applies to your nearest ally. I guess the idea is that you intervene over to your ally and then you press Spell Reflect and it gives them the buff too. You know, really nice for protecting, for example, your healer in PvP. But yeah, it's certainly become a much more niche legendary now. So yeah, big change over there. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. They are all the changes here on this week's, well, all the major changes that I think are worth highlighting in this week's beta patch. There's a couple of other minor things we didn't touch on. But yeah, the big class changes. Let me know what you think. Definitely some spicy changes this week. Some really whopper nerfs coming in and rebalancing stuff, which I think is good though. Overall, I think this needs to happen. And yeah, you know, they're going to keep tuning. Like I said last week, they're going to keep tuning. We saw that with the Warlock Necrolord thing. They did big nerf last week, another big nerf this week. They could buff it up if it's too weak now. They're going to be tweaking all these things and trying to get them just right before live. Again, with the Covenant abilities in particular, the goal is certainly that they would all be attractive. They'd all have strengths and all have weaknesses. So we'll see if they hit on that. We'll see what they do. Let me know how it's affecting your class. How is your class and spec looking? And I will see you all next time for more. Bye-bye.